At long last, finally, the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 makes it onto the channel. I'm late to the party, I know that, but what helps me with that is I'm not going to start repeating myself with all the different specs this bike's got. I'll throw a few things at you that are important to me or important for a shorter rider in particular, such as 825mm seat height. So it's about, I'd say, slightly smaller than average for an adventure type bike, which is good for somebody like myself with the shorter legs. It's got a 17-litre fuel tank. It's not bad considering the engine size. I'm sure you'll be able to get 200 miles off the back of that, but let me know if you've bought one, how many miles have you had out of your full tank, because the specification books, I find they always over exaggerate, don't they? But I like a real world answer. So if you've bought one, how many miles are you getting out your tank? Let me know in the comments. I try not to watch too many videos on bikes that I'm going to review myself, because I don't want them to sway me at all with how I see a bike. I want to test it myself, look around it myself, decide whether I like it myself. I might have a similar opinion to other YouTubers, it might be completely different, but you know, everyone's different, aren't they? And I've tried not to watch any videos on this bike, but when it came out there was that much of a fuss over it. The videos were everywhere, all the big time YouTubers were out in all the force, weren't they? They were out everywhere. Everyone's had one, so I've seen little clips, there was no escaping it, but the hype seems to have died down a little bit because it's been out for a while, which is why I'm taking it out today so I can see what it's like. So let's have a look around it the usual way. I'll point at a few things I like. If I find anything I don't, I'll let you know. Now, close up, I think it's a nice looking bike. It's certainly an improvement on paper, better in every way. It's got 15 more horsepower, just under 40 horsepower. So it's a big step up as far as power goes. One thing I did like about the 411 was it was a bit agricultural. It was a bike that you could get dirty and kind of not care about it, but love it because you could throw it round a bit and kind of just misuse it and abuse it, and it would just keep going like an old workhorse. Whereas this looks and feels a bit more premium. I don't think you're going to ride it the same way. I don't know. The stand, it does seem to be quite a long stand. However, because of where it's angled, the bike does lean over quite a lot. Now, weight-wise on this, it's less than 200 kilograms, so comparing it to other big bikes, it should be quite light. However, I have heard from people who've bought them that they are quite heavy to lift just to straighten up, so we'll see how I get on shortly. You can see they've kind of followed the Himalayan lines with the crash bars and the way the light is at the front and the windshield. It's followed the kind of basic looks of that 411, but that's for me is where it ends, because it's got a new and improved engine, it's got different suspension, it's got a TFT screen, a lot more touches to this bike that just give it that expensive feeling. And still, it's not an expensive bike. I think they still come in at less than £6,000, which is still quite a cheap motorcycle. And it's worked wonders for the 411, because the 411 has dropped in price massively. I think you can get those now for less than £4,000 brand new, which is just amazing, because they're still great bikes. Rear passenger will be comfortable, and there's some decent grab handles there for them to grab onto. I like that. Also a little rack. A bike that you should be able to tour on and do a considerable amount of riding. I'll see if it's comfortable enough for that when we go on a test ride shortly. There is a centre stand as well. It has started raining, which is standard. I thought it was going to, and it has. Your horn, your indicators, you've got little menu toggle there, you've got lights, your pass there, so there's no flash on this side like you normally have. There's actually a home button there now that used to or would normally have your flash. Might catch a few people out that if you need to flash and you instantly go for that, because that's where they are on most other bikes. We'll see if I fall for that while we're riding. This side you've got a menu button, you've got your engine start and cut off, and then you've got some hazards just at the top there. Now when I started looking around this bike it wasn't raining. Now it's absolutely pouring. Do you know, it's standard every time I come here, standard. Anyway, the important bit for me is how this feels, how it rides. So I'm going to go for a ride, join me for that. I want to test, I want to see if it feels better than the 411. That was a great bike, albeit underpowered. Just want to see whether it's lost that Himalayan magic. Is it a better bike, or is it a different bike, or is it a bike that we never needed? Because the 411 did a job, didn't it? It was a good job as well. People riding them on road, off road, you name it. Is this going to be the same? Don't know, but I want to find out. So let's go for a ride and we'll find out together. What do you think of the walk round? Let me know in the comments. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you love it? You know, let me know. I'm always interested to hear. Stats wise, it's not that heavy a bike. It's less than 200 kilos. Now I know less than 200 kilos doesn't make it a light bike by any stretch, but I'm sat on this bike now and it's leaning over quite a lot. Let me see. Oh. That's hard work. It's doable, but that is heavy. I may have put a hip out actually trying to take that off the stand. Everything's nice and visible. You've got your rev counter going round, you've got your big prominent speedo, there's a clock, there's a temperature gauge, we've got gear indicators. What I will say as well with these bikes, I've always thought the 411 was a good seller, but you walk in that showroom and they've got these bikes lined up and every single one of them has got a sold sign on, so they're obviously selling very, very well. The seat feels really, really solid. It's not like a few bikes I've been on recently where the seats are quite plush and spongy and you sink into them and they feel comfortable straight off the bat. This feels quite stiff. Now I'm not sure whether or not that's a good thing yet or a bad thing, but we'll find out in due course. I think today the 411 Himalayan, for me, when I've took them out, when they're really cold they do just cut out on you until you warm them up. It's like old school riding with one of those that you feel like you need to have a choke on for a bit until the engine's warm, otherwise it'll cut out. Whereas this doesn't seem to have the same issue, or it's not cut out on me anyway. I've stopped a couple of times. You still chug along actually like the old one. They've updated it and tweaked it, put a better engine in it to give you the extra power that everybody was craving. The TFT there, that's nice, and kind of modernized it a little bit to make it feel like a new bike as opposed to just a slightly changed bike. You know, it does have that modern feel because it's got the TFT screen. Just riding around town, it does feel a little bit similar to the 411. It doesn't feel particularly sprightly. It feels like it does chug around a little bit, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because that was one of the characteristics of that bike that I liked. It seemed to be like a bike that used to rattle and chug a little bit. I want a bike with character. I don't want a bike to just be clinical. I think sometimes when they're too clinical and perfect, they lose a bit of the magic, or they certainly will stop you from loving them. There's a little bit of vibration, a little bit of chugging, just very Himalayan-like for me doing that. The more I've ridden it, the hard seat actually feels quite comfortable. I don't know what it is. It's just, it doesn't feel very plush, but I'm not getting any aches or pains after a while of riding it. It still feels alright, so they obviously know what they're doing. Okay, the Nationals, let's just open it up a little bit and just see. Slow down a touch, and it's nothing to do with the bike, it's to do with this god-awful weather again. Okay, try again. Oh, this weather's awful. Oh. Yeah, this weather is absolutely doing my head in at the moment. Oh, look at this, it's like an off-road section. Oh, I tell you what, you do feel the weight of this bike. I'm trying to just put my foot down to stop it from rolling. I'm on a slight hill, yeah, but my god, it feels like it's trying to roll, and I'm properly trying to work myself to stop it from rolling. It's bizarre because it's not a heavy bike, but anyway, yeah, I can't do it. Oh my god, I can't actually do it. I'm gonna have to move. That's just strange. This bike is so heavy, and yet on paper it's not actually that heavy. It just feels so heavy. It's a very strange feeling actually. And when I say it's heavy, when you're riding, it feels like most other bikes do, you know. It feels quite light when you're riding. Similar to the 411 in that bike was always, for me, it was a comfortable bike to ride. It's a nice bike. I like the 411. That's why this is difficult for me, because I do like the 411. So trying to ride this bike today and trying to compare it to that bike is difficult, because they are similar in ways, but they're also very different in ways as well. I mean, this has got Showa forks on it. Showa forks on this. The old one wouldn't have had that, because the old one seemed to be built to a budget, and I think that was one of the things with it. It was a very cheap bike, whereas this is more premium. In certain aspects it's very similar. It's still got the old chug, like a bit of a vibration to it. It looks very similar, you know, the way they've styled it. It's very, very similar looking, apart from the modern touches. It will get up to 60 mile an hour, and it gets up to 60 mile an hour quicker than the 411 did, but it's not rapid by any stretch. I wouldn't say it's that much of an improvement that this one takes your breath away and the other one doesn't. I would say that it is better. There is more performance. That improvement was needed on the 411. The 411 was a great bike, but when you were touring, if you got on the motorway, you wouldn't want to be doing more than 60 mile an hour. In fact, I think it was only capable of doing something like 65, 70 if you're going downhill with a wind behind you. So the improvements weren't required for this bike. But is it a massive improvement? I would say no. It's not a massive improvement power-wise. It's a little improvement. But I think it only needed to be a little improvement, because the 411 was nearly there. It was just missing that little bit of power. So this is winning on the power. You can do a little bit of green laning on them. I've seen people do more extreme stuff than that. You can do all that stuff with them, but you can do all of that on the 411. You just do it a little bit slower.
346 minutes later.
Oh, now, actually, I'm going to take back a lot of the stuff I've just said. this bike actually, now I'm actually riding it properly, okay, I'm going to retract my previous statement, and I'm going to say this. This is very interesting actually, how, and I suppose this is the good thing of having a bike for a while, is that you can test a bike for a bit and you can get an initial feel for it. But my initial impression of this bike was it was slightly faster than the 411 and slightly more modern, but because I've ridden it a little bit more and I've realised to actually get the best out of this bike, you do have to thrash it slightly. You have to take it higher up in the rev range. But when you do, the performance is there. The performance is considerably better. Give it a little bit more, then you get a hell of a lot more out of it. Oh, look at this. Doing some sneaking here. Gotta get some sneaking in. Traffic's bad. Do you know what? I'll say, as far as your sneaking goes on this bike, it's actually quite a nice bike to do it on, because you're tall. And I say it's an adventure bike, they all are quite tall, but because it's tall you can see quite far down the street, which is good. I'm still shocked that there are places across Europe where filtering is banned. And don't get me wrong, if you're filtering like a idiot, if you're doing 50 mile an hour past not moving traffic, then yeah, that should be banned. But if you are like all this traffic down here, I'm not going that way, so I don't need to, but I wouldn't want to be stuck in that. But I wouldn't go past it at 30 mile an hour. I'd bimble past it. I'm still getting past loads and loads of cars. And why is that illegal in certain countries? I don't get it. Don't get it. Never understood it. I think even in America it's illegal. In more states in America than it's legal. I don't know what they call it over there, lane splitting, whatever, I don't know. But in England, it's perfectly legal, and so it should be, as long as you're doing it responsibly and you're not riding like an idiot. You're fine, it's safe. Anyway, back to this. It's a new bike, you would expect everything to work as it should, and this, yeah, it does. It goes through the gears really, really nicely. You do have to thrash it a little bit. A little bit. I've done it to experience it, and I'm glad I did, because without giving it the little bit of a mild thrashing, without doing that, I wouldn't have been able to say this bike was that much better than the old 411. I'd have been saying it's a little bit better. And you know, everything else about this bike, everything is a little bit better. It's a little bit more comfortable. It looks a little bit better. The technology on this bike is a little bit better. The suspension, actually, no, I will say that's a lot better, because they've got the Showa forks on now. So certain things are a big improvement, certain things are a little improvement. This bike, if you ride it to its potential, you're working it harder, you get a hell of a lot more out of it than the 411 ever got close to. I mean, it's a completely different animal. You've got to give it the beans, and once you do, you'll realise this bike is so much better than the 411. It is. I would definitely recommend one of these bikes. That's the good thing about this bike as well. You can buy 411s now for less than £4,000. That is like £2,000 cheaper than this. So there are bargains to be had. However, if you're looking for a 411 and you're holding off, waiting for this to see whether it was any better or which one you should get, then 100% this is better, and this is the one that I would pick. However, there's a big steal on the 411s. If you like to save the pennies, there's bargains to be had. This 450 is better, but it's more expensive. The decision is yours. Personally, £2,000 difference at the minute between the 11 and the 450. What would you pick? £2,000. For me, the extra power, the extra fun you can have on this bike makes that extra £2,000 completely worthwhile, and the fact that you can do motorway journeys, long tours on this bike, and that just makes this a better overall bike and more usable for long journeys. Worth every penny. That's going to do me. I'm going to be here for about 3 hours talking about this and debating it. Thank you for watching. If you're interested, I will put a link in the description to Appleyards. It's here now, it's available. Just get your dibs in quickly, otherwise you'll be waiting a while for it to be shipped over. I'll catch you on the next one. Laters.